So my topic today is human trafficking because it's a rising problem in America and not only here but around the world. So human trafficking is the trade of humans for the purpose of sexual exploitment or labor exploitment, whether for the purchaser themselves or for somebody to purchase them from the trafficker. It can also mean that they're forcing a person into marriage for sexual exploitation once again, or they're actually taking a person's organs without their consent. It also happens to be my dream job. At this moment, I wish to be able to go help with human trafficking, help the prom if I need to go undercover and take down rings as best as I can. There's a lot of different ways that a human trafficker is going to lure in their victims, and they're not as obvious as you would think. Some of the most common ways is they're actually going to give you a job offer. They're going to try to exploit your weakness. You're going to need money. A lot of people are going homeless at the moment. They're going to use that to their advantage by offering someone a job. There's also general kidnapping, the most obvious. They're just going to grab someone, yank them off the street, whether in the daylight, whether in night, it doesn't actually really matter. And they can also steal someone's identity. That means either they take someone's ID, someone's papers, burn them, or they actually steal them, keep them in their possession to control the person. But people also need to remember that the difference between human trafficking and prostitution is that human trafficking, people are forced to do those types of things. They're put in pain, they're put through abuse. Once again, they use their IDs to make them do that, while prostitution is sometimes a choice. Although it might be forced by somebody's social structure or their economic situation, it's still a choice of the person on most cases. So, I live in Wausau. Wausau happens to be in the middle of Wisconsin. Now, human trafficking usually happens in more large populated areas, so Chicago and Minneapolis are perfect cities for that. What happens is instead of going right to Minneapolis, we have a lot of human traffickers right now coming up to Wausau, making a pit stop for extra supplies, extra victims, and then going to Minneapolis. This year, we've had 47% increase in human trafficking, so we see it a lot. I worked at Home Depot over the summer, and as I was sitting there, I had to be a cashier that day. A man came up to me and I looked in his cart. He had a bucket, some face masks, some chemicals, and some rope. And in my head, I was thinking, wow, that actually kind of looks like he's committing a murder, kidnapping, LOL. I kind of laughed it off because I didn't really think any of it. I went through the transaction and he kind of paused and looked at me and went, you're really patient and you're really kind. And it kind of threw me off because I wasn't doing anything different than I would for anyone else. I was kind of actually zoning out. I didn't really care. But I thanked him and I tried to move on. He said, no, my daughter has a window washing business and we help rich people wash their windows, and I think you'd be perfect for that. And I realized he's trying to build kind of a rapport between the two of us, addressing the fact that as a middle-class person working, that I too would agree that rich people can be very hard to deal with on occasions, especially as a cashier. And he said, here's a number, call, and then ask for my daughter Claire, and she's the owner of this business, and she'll give you a job. Now, because I worked for the police department for a while, I realized what it was. It was trying to string me into a human trafficking kind of situation. If I would have called back, I would have given the name, that would have marked me, I would have gone in for a job interview, and it would have been done from there. And posters like this are popping up all over Wausau. Everywhere, people are trying to rip them down, and a new one comes every day at the moment. I worked again last summer there, and over 3 days, a lady came in and asked every younger worker if they wanted an extra job. So, and the scary thing is when I talked to them about it, a lot of them were going to take her up on the offer, and I had to warn them not to do that because it's not common knowledge what that actually is. But that is one of the more trickier ones. I've also had a friend in Wausau, people can walk everywhere because it's a very small city and it's easier in the more enclosed downtown areas. I was visiting some friends and all of a sudden the door swings open. It's 10:30 at night. My friend's sister comes in, scraped up the knees, scraped up the elbows, and covered in blood. And we all got really frightened. We wondered, and we asked her what was going on, what happened, and she said that a man asked her for directions, which isn't uncommon in Wausau because it's really confusing to drive in, very spread out. So she walked down and tried to give him directions. You need to understand that this city, before this increase, was allowing kids to go out even after dark, ride their bikes. There wasn't fear, so she didn't know to be afraid at first because human trafficking has increased that much in only a year, so people are not aware. Well, she went up to the window and he grabbed her, yanked her in the car. Luckily, she's a bit of a stronger woman, so she was able to elbow and kick and make her way out, and she ran the entire way up to the apartment, and those people freaked out and drove away. So obviously there's a lack of skill here, and we're really lucky for that because that's keeping victims from getting exploited, but that it's going to stop being that way soon. It's actually going to start getting professional. We have people coming in every day be arrested. A man who claimed himself to be a pimp looking for territory the other day. So it's getting kind of scary there. And that's why I have such a very broad interest in this topic. Now, some statistics to give you a better idea of human trafficking right now. Around 800,000 people are trafficked over the borders. Now, that's not including the people who are trafficked from within their own country, but that's everywhere. And the amount of people getting trafficked is actually only growing. Now, 80% of these are women and girls, and another 35% are the broad term of minority. And a lot of these people are used for sexual exploitation. But other than that, they're also going to domestic servitude, forced domestic servitude, agriculture work, and forced labor. Around 5% of these women actually end up in factories in different countries. In all, this kind of field, this kind of job is actually worth $32 billion worldwide. And once again, that's also only growing. But there's a lot of legal implications, because what happens is when they bring a person over the border by force, by coercion, by exploitation, they often take their cards, their immigration, anything like that, any documents that tells them who they are, and destroys them or holds them for their own being. So if someone from another country tries to go and get help, they're treated more like an illegal immigrant and sometimes put in a worse situation, or treated as a criminal for things they can't help with. So instead of the CJ system giving them any assistance, they're not receiving that like they should, because the laws are actually kind of starting to work against them. And it is recognized that illegal aliens, no matter what kind, will have rights, but not enough in most countries to actually fully protect them and give them the help that they need. And in a lot of cases, if an immigrant family is coming over the border willingly, human traffickers will pay them to take a person with them, like call them your brother Bob, call them your sister Janet, take them over the border with you and tell them they're in your family, here are some fake papers. And they're so grateful for the money that they don't report it. So now immigrants themselves are helping others also get captured. Now, right now in our system, the greatest opportunity to catch human traffickers is actually through our healthcare. Almost 30 to 80%, it varies each year, of people who were human trafficked said they came in contact with a healthcare provider and were given no assistance because they weren't able to recognize the signs of somebody who was in human trafficking. So the country decided to start funding the National Human Trafficking Resource Center, which when a healthcare provider might spot someone who's in this situation, they can contact this organization, they can contact security and law enforcement, and they can get them the help they need. And there's more training in healthcare systems right now to allow people to be able to recognize what's going on. Because right now what's happening is a lot of these people are going into the emergency room and they're around a lot of people. They can't, healthcare providers can't really give them the attention they need, and so the signs aren't noticed. So if you think that this is happening, healthcare providers are actually going to take them in a separate room alone in case the person controlling them is there so they can speak freely. They're going to try to provide tests for any STDs, anything like that, any infections, and they're going to note them down for long-term treatment, not just for physical, but for also mental, because these people are going to need therapy, they're going to need help, and oftentimes, because they go through these abusive situations, they're going to have injuries that were not healed correctly, an arm broken crookedly, all that kind of thing, and they're going to need more help into the future to fix that. But most importantly, healthcare providers are told to give them a choice, because so far in their life, all their choices have been decided for them. They weren't given an opportunity to do anything for themselves. So doing this will allow them to feel safer in their decision, and will also allow them to feel freer and more in control of the situation. So, and what a lot of people don't know is if they do choose to seek help as a victim, they're going to need a companion or a translator, someone that they trust, so a therapist, something like that. And once again, if the healthcare provider contacts the National Human Trafficking Resource Center, one will be provided for them. So there's a lot of health concerns for these kind of victims, not just physical, but also mental. Obviously, they're going to have to deal with harmful abortions because this is going to happen in that kind of situation. And the abusers aren't going to want to take them to a place where they can seek proper medical attention, so they're going to do it botched at home at a different place, and it's going to be harmful for the woman involved. That's going to give them gastrointestinal problems, and that's also going to give them typical injuries from abuse. So a lot of women or men are going to show signs of like cigarette burns, frequent bruises, frequent broken bones, and then mentally, they're going to obviously have PTSD and they're going to have anxiety, depression. This thing's going to haunt them for years, but it's not impossible for them to overcome it with help. So if any of you ever suspect that you're in contact with a human trafficking victim, do not judge. Try to understand. And try to get the person in private, because right now they're gonna be scared. They're not gonna be looking over their shoulder. Their control might be there. They need to be able to talk to you confidently. You're gonna wanna build rapport so that they can trust you and that you can trust them. So even if you can't get them that help that day because they're too scared, if they need help, they're gonna come back to you, and that's gonna give you the opportunity to contact the authorities. And they're gonna come to you if they get hurt, and that's gonna give you the opportunity to get them proper health care where they can notice what's happening and get them to the authorities. But do not immediately shove them into a situation where they need to contact police. That can totally break the rapport. Once again, that makes the situation outside of their control, and it'll only stress them out and break their trust. Also, if the least you can do is offer hotline options. A lot of people actually don't know about these, and if they're coming up from out of the country, they're not gonna have any idea what phone number they can text or call, and so they're not gonna have any idea that there's actually help out there for them. So, human trafficking is a hidden crime. A lot of people, when they imagine it, it's in a dark alleyway, and it's just people getting snatched off the street in abandoned buildings or something like that. It's actually in broad daylight in a more crowded area. So like cities like Minneapolis and Chicago, it's very common there because it's so crowded, but also events like the Super Bowl, a crowded mall, it's perfect. And the victims themselves are also unexpected. They don't look how you would picture them, sickly or anything like that. They're people that you bump into on the street. It's the woman that's walking her baby. It could be the other woman that's shopping for jewelry. It could be someone in broad daylight you wouldn't even know until you gave it proper attention. They're not always the image that you would expect. So if you want more signs to look for a victim, look for poor mental health and abnormal behavior. They're not gonna be meeting your eye. They're gonna avoid taking off their clothes or like changing in front of a doctor or trying on clothes.